Hello again. I wanted to go through the latest logo animation we've been working on here. This is a narrated breakdown of the process for those of you who may be interested, because I wanted to spend some time and actually focus on talking about the how-to of this whole process rather than what I usually do is just simply upload it and call it a day. I originally wanted to make this as a SALSA logo, but as for those of you who may not know, this SALSA is the Southern Arizona Limb Salvage Alliance here at the University of Arizona Medical Center specifically. But ultimately, a few years ago, we had actually made this logo intended as a 3D printable file on Thingiverse, and here's a shot of that entry as it stands today. Surprisingly enough, it's been downloaded a handful of times, and I honestly didn't think there would be many people interested in SALSA as well as 3D printing at the same time, but I suppose I was wrong. Overall, this animation was made using that original mesh that I did several years ago. I just pulled it back into Lightwave and modified it to include some beveled edges and improved geometry, kind of rounder edges and smoother edges at the corners. Overall, I just wanted to make this as something that would print at the first time through, but this time it was something that could be animated. And even though those processes are similar, they're not the same when you try to optimize them, so it still required a little bit of touch-up work. As a matter of fact, I'd love to use this opportunity to plug a book which taught me a great deal about these concepts. This was a book by Vaughan. It's a non-denominational book. He calls himself Proton, and he's just a Lightwave wizard, and he details a number of really good techniques for modeling and improving your skills as a modeler in Lightwave. He's a pretty active member on the user groups around the interwebs, and he's an advocate for Newtek on this product. He's also helped me troubleshoot my issues several times. He's very, very helpful. So as a result, I'm obviously a big fan, and I'm very grateful of his effort. Anyway, here's a few screenshots of the iterations that we did along the way. We get something we were overall pretty happy with and could actually be rendered well. I wanted to make the scene that had a stronger depth of field effect, but this first version just didn't go so well. It was a little too blurry at times. It seemed like one of those cloudy dream states rather than a real focused effect that guided the viewer and immersed you within it to give you a sense of scale and size. So overall, I ended up redoing this whole thing eventually, but I didn't have time at first because it finished rendering just in time for the diabetic foot conference that we did just this past month. However, since then I've actually had a little more time, so I reworked the scene. It's got a much deeper depth of field effect, and it's got improved camera motions. I've also added a few Dutch angles here and there. I changed the lighting effects to give off a little glint on the surfaces. You can see here on the head of the SALSA man as it comes around, it picked up some blue, as well as here on the red plus sign in the middle segment there, you can see a little flash of reflection. And finally here at the end, coming off that blue box, you can see a glint that sort of pulls over it and changes color, almost like a green effect. It really seems to make these objects look a bit more tangible, like real slight touches that you can do that have a nice effect. So this is, much better than where it started off, in my opinion. Also, I made some other smooth pulls around the end there. If you notice here in this first video, that camera was sort of jerking and yanking the viewer's head around when you watch it, versus this one here that I did where it's much, much better. It sort of lifts and it slides. It's got a smoother motion, in my opinion. I also added a few sound effects. These came from the freesound.org resources. It's a pretty neat little site the way it's set up, and I've used it a number of different times for my other projects. I like some of the sound effects. You can go in and search and find and download pretty quick for free. The final version of this video was 1080p, and I rendered about 2,500 samples in Octane, which took nearly an hour per frame on my little laptop that I have set up here in the office, but it worked out very well. The final result's pretty good, but I still can't figure out why these little corners showed up here on the edge. They're like those little black triangles. It's not a deal breaker, because if it was, I would have re-rendered the whole thing again, but I suspect it's something to do with the surface texturing between Lightwave and the Octane plugin that I didn't get straightened out the first time around, so I'm going to have to look into that again for something serious. But either way, I hope you like it, and I always enjoy the opportunity to do something creative once in a while that isn't, so dry or uni-purpose for my channel. So thanks again, YouTube.